Hello, everyone, and welcome to A Bigger Bite, where we take a deeper dive into some of the biggest films of the year. Once again, I am Matt, and joining me is the Bitesize host, Nick. We got Paige, a Bitesize writer, and we got Bitesize YouTube representation right down below with Shak. And, Shak does his writing thing elsewhere, but
Yes,
we'll
sir.
plug that later. But today, we are here to talk to you about The Substance, a movie I watched 2 weeks ago and immediately bought on 4K. And then Paige didn't realize it had a physical release, so that was a fun conversation. But no, that movie is special. It is one of the few non-slasher horror movies I found myself gravitating to. If my top 10 list had not been released like prior to watching it, probably would have come in at number 10. But it is a very solid film in my eyes. And with that, we're going to start off. Paige, give us your thoughts on the film.
I mean, Carly Farshad. I mean, this girl, I've got to say, has honestly, I think, directed one of the best body horror films I've ever seen. Like, it's up there with The Fly and The Thing. Like, this batshit satire is crazy in the best way possible, I guess, is like the best way to like put that in terminology. Like, this movie just has so much stuff going for it, and it's like metaphors and symbolism for how women are looked at in like the Hollywood is just so fascinating, and it's so lovely to get like a woman's perspective from this. So I just love this movie. Number 4 of 2024 favorite films of the year for me.
Shak, what are your thoughts?
Man, this. I'll say it barely missed my top 10, but it was in there for like most of the year. I made the mistake of watching this. It was like right before it had played at TIFF, and I watched it eating a breakfast sandwich. And like halfway through, I was like, that was the biggest mistake of my life.
It could have been worse. You could have watched it with a parent.
Yeah. Oh dear Lord. Did you watch it with a parent?
No, I didn't. I'm just saying.
I was gonna say. Okay.
I showed my grandfather and my auntie on New Year's Eve. Yeah, they weren't fans. Let's just say that. It's a New Year's Eve film, so I was like, "This is perfect."
Oh my god! Dude,
no,
that is wild.
Yeah.
But like, I loved it. It's one of the most insane things I'd seen in a minute. It's not subtle in the slightest, but it's a movie where it uses that unsubtlety as a feature rather than a bug. Because sometimes it's better to hit with the sledgehammer than with a scalpel. And this is the one where it's so like, it's telling you, and it still manages to get its point across, even with all the fucking chaos and the gristle of the fucking body horror stuff. It still feels like a very effective story. And I've seen this twice already. The fact that I've seen this more than once is fucking insane to me. But yeah, it's a fucking knockout. I loved it.
Nick, your thoughts?
Yeah, I like it. It was in my top 10 of the year. This film's gross, man. And like I say that in a positive way. And it's not even just like the body horror. Like anytime Dennis Quaid's eating, it's just kind of disgusting.
It's almost more disgusting than the rest of the movie.
Yeah, like it's really an uncomfortable watch, which I think is a fun aspect of it. But yeah, I'm a big fan of it. I think the performances are really good. I think the direction is really good, and I think we'll probably talk about the different aspects a little further in this video. But I think some of the makeup and effects are brilliant.
Stellar. I'm gonna steal a little, give a little nod to our buddy Jeff Alterman here real quick, where he has told Paige and I the story of was watching the film, and he was watching the film, and his wife was just next to him, and she was playing video games, and she's just hearing the sound effects like of Dennis Quaid eating and this, and she just had to stop and be like, "What are you watching?" And the only words he said were, "It's French," and she's like, "Okay," and.
Yeah.
But like it is a very French film. That is, it's a great way to describe it. But it's a French film brought to the American audience.
It's also like it's a hilarious like a French interpretation of just 80s America. Like I know it's
Yeah.
modern, but it still feels like something out of the 80s. Like everything from like the show that they're hosting, fucking Pump It Up, to like all this other shit, the accolades and all this stuff. Fucking I love how it's like it's every single thing in this world is like the most base version of it. It's like, hey, we got the New Year's show, not the New Year's show on the network. Like, there's no name for this thing. There's no real name for anything. It's just all right. Let's just what this type of shit is, and just move on from there.
Yeah,
But I think that's what I liked. Oh, yeah, exactly. That's what I was gonna say. I feel like I think that's like the whole point of it is the show. Like, I mean, it really is like it's like showing like Hollywood like in that dream sequence way that like we think it's so like glimmer and glow and stuff like that. And then but the fact that it really is, it emphasizes on the fact that how women are perceived in the Hollywood like limelight, and that when men and society just look at women as beauty, and when they start to age out, what happens to those women, what happens to them mentally. And I think that's like the biggest thing with this film that I love the most, was that not only like it shows how society like look at women like externally, am I saying the word right?
Externally.
Yep, externally, but how women perceive themselves internally, because of the effects of how people look on you on the outside, like makes you feel like you have to have this like perfection standards, and those are just so unrealistic. And then we see in this film how that affects our lead character Elizabeth. So
no, that's very fair. And I just got to say, this is one of those films where, when it comes to awards love, it got very solid awards love. However, I still feel like we're missing Margot Qualley in there. Just got to say, I would pull out. I would pull out. I'm going to say this, and I'm prefacing it this way: Zoe Saldana, because she is not the supporting role in her film. She is the lead.
Yeah.
And I would put her in there in that place, and I'd move Zoe Saldana and kick out her castmate in the
Agreed.
but it's so true though with Margot Qualley. Like, this film is a two-hander. Like, it really like it's Elizabeth and Sue, like, and then together we get the monstro or whatever you call it. Yeah, you become one. Yes, the perfect fit. It's just like in Fight Club. Like, everyone knows like what the rules are, but you can't speak of them. But like, rule number one, and always never forget, like, you are one. And this film is a two-hander. Like, they split the like time of the film like very equally.
And also to your point earlier about like the internal thing, I want to bring up is that I really like watching it again, was like I loved how Demi Moore's performance, which first off I'm really hoping she wins for Best Actress, but also I loved how much of it is just mostly internalized. Like, yeah, they're probably going to show like the later act stuff of when she's like old and gross in like the reels or whatever in the montage, but like it's just the early parts of her just kind of look like, even before like the makeup scene, but just like her just kind of like looking at her body in the mirror before she takes it, and just kind of like looking and focusing so much on those imperfections, and it just essentially showing a lot without saying a lot, which I always appreciate. I really just love how internal this performance was before like the craziness.
I appreciate that so much. What were you gonna say, Nick?
No, like, yeah, I think a lot of the headlines are the body horror and the latter portion of the film, but it only works as well as it does because they do such a good job laying the groundwork, especially with Demi Moore's character, in the way that even the saga of her meeting the high school friend and how that sets up for the date. And getting ready for the date is the big scene that's kind of taken over, gone viral and stuff like that. Yeah. But the whole reason that scene works as well as it does is you get to see the evolution of, I'll take this guy's number. Like, I'll be nice about it. But like, I'm still Like, I just had this show, like, really recently. I just got canned, and I was a superstar. And you get to kind of see her not belittle herself, but bring herself down to a level where she now does want to go out with this guy. And then obviously bring herself down to a level where she can't even bring herself to go out with this guy. And I think that is something that's really doesn't get like the highlights, but it's something that's really important about Demi Moore's character for me in this one.
Yeah, and that's what I also find so fascinating about this too, is that like I think sometimes a lot of people when they watch this movie that they definitely think like, oh well, if they are one wise Margaret Qualley like taking control and going 3 months without changing and stuff like that, but like the prefaces on "You Are One," that's Demi Moore, like deep down, like her character Elizabeth is thriving on all of this like fame that she's receiving and everyone like clamoring over her, that in her mind she still wants that, and so that's why she's abusing this power. Like that is Demi Moore's character doing that to herself. And it just shows though that like once again, like I already mentioned it, but like how people's expectations of you like begin to affect you like internally, and that's what was definitely happening. And that's why this film is so like symbolic and so many metaphors that it is going for. Like we can also mention like how it goes like has very similar like shots and sequences of like The Shining. Like the film has so many things like going for it that make it so unique. Like you kind of said earlier, like it has like these 80s vibes to it, and that's definitely I think when like The Shining comes in.
Oh, there's so much Kubrick in this. Down from like the carpet at the studio to the using like the 2001 intro song. So like I'm like, oh wow, she's really paying homage in like multiple different ways. And like it's noticeable, but it's not as distracting as it could, as like something normally like that would be.
I will tell you while watching it, I noticed some things. I didn't notice all of them. And then it's after the fact. I'm like, oh.
Even like the shot where they're both in the bathroom
enough.
and it's like looking upward. It's like, oh right, when like Jack Nicholson's like
exactly the camera angles
the
and
same
stuff like
shot.
that.
I'm like, oh wow, we're really doing this.
Exactly, and only us movie nerds would really notice these things. But like, I really liked how they use like the frameworking in this film. Not to mention like the sound in this film. Like not only like Dennis Quaid's character like munching on those shrimp heads, but also like the like alarming like sound of the sequence, more or less. Like when you're watching the video of it, like the sirens call. Like to me, I was like, yo, if I could get that as my ringtone, like maybe that's what I'll wake up to every morning. Like the other,
you're like, fuck.
You want to wake up to the sound of Dennis Quaid eating shrimp?
Definitely not that. I'll pass on that.
That would be a startling way to wake up, I think.
Yeah, just a little
Very
bit,
startling way.
Also, that score is banging.
Yes,
not gonna lie.
Fantastic. That score was absolutely fantastic. No notes. I also love how contained it is. Like, sure, there are moments like when she's at the studio, it's not as contained, but for the most part, a good portion of that story just takes place in that apartment. And
100%, yeah.
And it is just
or in the studio.
Yeah, well, that's what. But that's what, like, those moments in the apartment, especially when they're going from body to body, just incredible. I love seeing how it's causing like the abuse of power is causing Demi to just be like, fine, you're gonna treat me like shit. I'm just gonna treat myself like shit.
Exactly.
Try to make myself happy, and it's like, wow, okay. Didn't like you would think it would do the exact opposite, because in the end you're only hurting yourself. Like, realistically, what are you doing that is gonna harm Sue?
Yeah, at most it's like putting the fucking chicken leg.
It's just annoying Sue because she's waking up to seeing the place destroyed like it is.
Well, and that's the thing where you get the arrogance of Demi Moore's character, in that my time has passed. It happens to everyone. And she's not ready for that to happen. So she gets a substance and she has Sue, so she can basically have
Like a reset.
a second
Yeah.
shot at it.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens is the exact same thing that Hollywood does to her. Sue outgrows her, doesn't really want anything to do with her anymore, and it shows you that this cheat code she thought she had, it's almost like the idea of destiny. You're destined to be forgotten. Like that's just the trajectory of how this is going to go. You think you found something to defeat that, but it's not going to happen. Like your path is obscurity, for lack of a better term. And I think it's interesting that they went that route and then doubled down on it with the actions of Sue.
Dude,
for Demi's character.
Even the the intro of the movie kind of really just puts that into focus. That fucking intro where it's just like focus on just like her star, which I think is such a brilliant way to like
I agree.
establish the entire backstory in just like a minute. Like,
the way the movie it begins that way and ends that way, and I think it's so flawless, like the beginning and end of the film, because it's pretty much like Hollywood is like starting to disrespect you, and with that, Elizabeth is starting to like disrespect herself, and we get like her like one of the final lines of the film is like, "I hate myself," like, and that's like the whole like metaphor of like the film, like a bit like. And the exploit of it all, that like she, because of what everyone else thought, she began to hate herself, even though deep down there was really nothing wrong with her. Like she was a beautiful woman, she had a thriving career, and sometimes life just fades away, but she wasn't ready to get out of that limelight just yet.
Literally, yeah. Like at the beginning, like yes, like obviously it's how she sees herself. But even then, the whole time I'm like, bruh, she's still attractive as hell. What are we doing here?
And see that's what I was about to get to, because I think one of the most heartbreaking moments is when she's looking at herself in the mirror before taking the substance. Because it's like, she's still just absolutely beautiful. She's gorgeous, but she's not seeing herself that way. Yeah. And I think it's beautifully mirrored when she's gonna give this really nice guy who's had a former classmate, had a thing for her for years, a chance, and she just can't see the beauty in herself, and she keeps going back trying to make herself look more beautiful so she can attract, and she never finds that beauty in herself, and it's just like, damn, that's powerful.
I know, and it's so fucked up, like, and it really makes me wonder too, like when I get to that age, like would I, like, if I had this like option, like would I dream of, like, if I could dream to have like a better version of myself, like would I take it? But like I think with that, like I mean, it kind of goes with Spider-Man in a sense, like with the rights come responsibilities. What is the saying, guys?
Great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah, exactly. You get this power, but you need to use it responsibly, and obviously she abuses the fuck out of it. So, but curious, would you guys take it if you would?
I probably would. Honestly, I don't think I would.
I don't like needles, so I don't think I would either, even though I have a sleeve. But
I mean, what am I? The only way I would improve myself is getting thinner. Like that's I like who I am. Other than that, and well, and maybe lose my severe ADHD. But that's not the point.
I mean, no offense here, Matt, but like you are not in your 50s.
Yeah.
So I think what you may consider it later in your life would be a lot more.
Her point was, would you find yourself taking?
Not right now. When you're older, obviously, because I think right now, because
that's when I think the question has merit. Like I think, unless you're looking at like, oh yeah, you know, like, oh, maybe I could be someone better, I could win the lottery, financials could change, whatever. But like when you're at that point where your life, at least in your eyes, is starting to fail you, like for Demi, her life is fine. She's just getting booted out of Hollywood, basically. But like the rest of her life, okay. She felt like
she was nothing without that, though. Yeah. That's a big thing in this film.
Yeah, and that's the problem, is that she has this sole focus of what her
ego is too powerful.
It's so focused on the character that she has been throughout this Elizabeth Sparkle entity versus who she is as a human being. When she loses that, she doesn't know what herself is anymore. She's not Elizabeth Sparkle. Then what am I? okay, I'm someone who can go and have a date with this guy from high school. Oh, I'm even less than that. And that's when you get to see everything, like the disintegration of it all.
Yeah. Well, if you want to go based off of if I'm in my 50s, the answer is still no, because I think Shaq will co-sign this next statement with me. Black don't crack.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I know black people in their 70s and 80s who look like they're in their 50s. I ain't even kidding.
Actually, I got an alternate, dumber, like a less important question. Would you watch Pump It Up if it was a real show?
No.
No. If I want those abs, if I want to look like Margot Qualley or Demi Moore,
she's
maybe.
lying. She's lying. She would watch the hell out of it.
Because like
I do those exercises
like the most
with Demi
random
Moore
show
or
to watch
Margaret
for like
Qualley,
3 minutes on a daytime.
But see, here, this is where what you said comes into play, Shaq. Would I watch it? No. But even though it's done in modern day, in like the 70s and the 80s, 100% people would watch that stuff.
This was a perfect example. Like, I think like Carly Forshaw like kind of like used that reference of like the like workout like show is like that kind of happened to like Jane Fonda. Like Jane Fonda was this like working actress that over time as she aged out, she transferred over to TV and she had her own like exercise like workout show. So I think there's a lot of like metaphors and like way that Carly looks at like Hollywood throughout like the ages. It's not just a modern time, it's how it's changed over the course of since we've been dealing with pretty much like sexism, ageism, and like beautyism, more or less.
But we also don't really have a modern day Elizabeth Sparkle because like there were aspects of Jane Fonda, but she has like a career out of it. Like Elizabeth Sparkle is basically Richard Simmons. She's basically Billy Blanks. Like,
well, they did say she won an Oscar. She won an Oscar, and he makes a joke like, "Oh, it was for King Kong." Like he makes a joke that supposedly she had won an Oscar. Like,
and that's like this was her main career path. It wasn't that she was. Yeah, the idea of her being an actress is, even though it was Oscar winning, is almost viewed as a joke. They make light of it.
Yeah, that's true.
So I think it's tough because even though it is a modern day film, that feels like something from like when I would like the late infomercials would be on and I'd see like Billy Blank's Ty Bo or
I thought you were about to go somewhere totally different.
No. No, but you would see these people like there's people that obviously like names I don't remember and stuff like that. And then Richard Simmons would probably be the pop culture biggest one of that. But I just don't think something like that would. I think in today's modern world, Elizabeth Sparkle is like a Peloton person, like someone who teaches you how to ride a bike.
Yes. She would be making appearances on like Sex in the City, like and shit like that.
A Zumba instructor.
Yep. Yeah. Exactly. But like, I'm
she's
very
instructing
curious.
you as you drive through Paris or something like that.
Yeah,
like,
exactly. I'm very curious though what you guys think of like the third act of this film when
I love it. I'm just
Monstro, what is it called? Like
Monstro Elizabeth
Sue. I don't even know.
Monstro.
It went longer than I thought it would because I thought it would be like
it is the last 30 minutes of the film.
That's what I mean. I thought like once Margaret took the substance again, that it would kind of be like, okay, we see the reveal of the monster, and that would just kind of be the end of it.
Yeah.
Like, oh, she's transformed, and then we're just like, okay, she's like that forever. So for it to go into like full-on bloodbath.
Well, here's the thing. It goes into your point you made earlier about this movie is not subtle. And they wanted to hammer that point home.
Yeah,
that's what I respect about it.
No, I think definitely too, because I think it like the monster verse or not monster verse, but like her becoming that monster is like a hypo like product of the industry. Like this is what the industry like made her become into, more or less. Like she started like accepting what everyone else was saying about her, and it turned like those demons like transformed her into her own monster, more or less. And yeah, I do. And that was my biggest criticism when I first saw the film, when I was like, wow, this movie like literally was like 10 out of 10, like perfect. Until those last 30 minutes, I was like, this movie is, I was like, what are they doing with these last few moments? Like, it's so over the top. But like, the more I sit on it, like, I don't know how else you would have ended this film. Exactly. Because it has to be so over the top just show you like this is what the industry is doing to like women. Like
Mhm.
this is what's happening, and like if we don't change and stuff like that, it is going to make someone a monster and blow up in your face pretty much. Like
Yeah. Man, like watching it, again, thinking about it, it's so baffling that it made, like, I'm so happy that it made it all the way to like a Best Picture nomination, because the Academy, enough members of the Academy saw that and was like, yes, I'll still nominate it.
exactly. This film is a big fuck you to the industry. And that's
Exactly.
what I love
Again,
most about it.
it's so good. Like, yeah, the fact that it's a direct criticism to them while doing all of this at like Academy, who normally also really hates horror and anything on this level, for them to go like the most extreme version of it, to say yes, we'll accept it because it is satire. It's great, but also like, what the hell? And I say that as a compliment.
Yeah, and I mean, 5 Oscars is nothing to slouch at all. Like,
And like the ones, like the most of the ones that it got were the ones I expected. So yeah, like makeup and effects, of course. Demi Moore, of course. Screenplay was like, okay, it did win it at Cannes, so that kind of has precedent.
Yeah.
But like the big one,
And director too.
And director too. Coralie, I remember Coralie. That one I also went up for because I didn't think that she would get it. Because I thought it would be like any of the other like 10 nominations that would get it over that. But the fact that she made it in, cherry on top. She deserves
Totally
that
agree.
for sure.
And I think this also too, like the whole discussion about this film too, like I really do think it like is a great narrative for Demi Moore, because if you like kind of think about it, like I mean, after her Golden Globe win, like she literally said that like someone once told her like you're just like a blockbuster popcorn actress, like you'll never be taken like seriously, like, and it really resonates. And like you can compare her filmography with how her character is seen and stuff like that. So the comparisons are really much there. And I think that's what makes me really like think Demi deserves this win, because she's been in this industry for what, over probably 40 years, and is just now finally getting her light. And it's kind of beautiful to see that she is older and she is getting these meaty roles to like chew on and be able to execute something that not only is just like obviously it's a fiction film, but like it really does relate to like the realism of the industry like today and how she's seen by others.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to take anything away from Demi, but I do think there's a little bit of revisionist history here. Like, too many people are comparing her in the same way that they're looking at like Pamela Anderson in The Last Showgirl.
Okay.
Demi had a career. Like, she's had films where she has acted. This isn't like this out of nowhere thing.
Yes,
like
but
but she's never been nominated though, which I do think is kind of insane.
Yes, and for the nomination, I get it, but this isn't Brendan Fraser in The Whale. There is ample example that Demi Moore can act, and unfortunately, getting the accolade is the thing that was missing. It's much closer on a lesser extent to a Leonardo DiCaprio than this rags to riches Pamela Anderson. Oh, she finally did it, guys. She did it a lot. She just didn't get acknowledged for it. But like, we have the body of work that can see that the woman can act. So I do think that there's been a little bit of that. Like, oh, she finally did it. Nah, guys, she did it before. Like, she hasn't done it in a little bit. She took a break.
She's just never been honored by her
peers.
Her peers, yes, that's the word I was looking for.
Yeah.
But this isn't like a surprise. It's one of those people that, like, if they were given the shot, I have no reason to think that they wouldn't have done it. Versus something like, you look at films like Blast from the Past and Monkey Bone and The Mummy, very entertaining, but you don't think you're going to get the whale out of them. Like, there's no
hey, listen.
to that.
Bedazzled should have got a Best Picture nomination. You know what I'm saying?
Hell yeah, Shaq.
Shout out Elizabeth Hurley.
Yes, sir.
That's our next to me. That's our next to me, guys.
Hey, I'm here for the
honestly, probably. Who knows? But yeah, that's my thing too, though. Like, while I do think Demi is so deserving of this, I really do think this film is a two-hander. Like
Yes.
her and Margaret literally split time. Like they think they have like pretty much the same amount of like screen time throughout the film and stuff like that. So for Margaret to not get her flowers too is a little bit of a disappointment, because like without Quali, like Moore's character isn't complete, more or less.
Thank you for bringing that. I just remembered. I also really like how the filmmaking essentially changes depending on who's on screen.
Yes.
Based on like how when Demi's on screen, it's like it's got the shaky cam, it's got like
it's more chaotic. Yes, exactly.
cinematography, and then as soon as fucking Margaret Qualley comes in, it's basically a music video where it's just glossy and bright. Like everything is a bit brighter. It's great. And I just love how it switches back and forth, and especially when shit starts getting out of control, then it almost starts becoming interchangeable.
No, it does start becoming interchangeable, and I think that's an important aspect of this. But you are absolutely correct. It does become more of a music video, and let's be honest, it becomes more of today's type of music videos where it's hypersexualized and not a lot of substance.
Yeah.
No pun intended. But with
no
that
pun
said,
incredibly intended.
Yeah.
Pun incredibly intended.
But with that said, though, like I think like Universal dropped this film. They were going to distribute this film, and they dropped it like last second because I think they were like scared. Like, how do we market this film? How do we sell this sexualized film that's saying like a big FU to the industry itself?
They
and that's
probably just didn't know how to market a film that's like half nudity.
Well, yeah.
And that is literally half the film.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. And I showed my grandfather this movie on New Year's Eve, and I was like, I mean, I'm so one with my body that I'm just like, I don't care. Like, love your body. Like,
you didn't think that one through.
Yeah, I did not think that one through. That I was like, my grandfather probably doesn't feel that way though.
With this old man seeing fucking geysers of blood.
Let's be honest. Afterwards, he was probably like, "What was that name of that movie again?" So I can watch it later.
We're not gonna. We don't want to think about that page. You can think about that.
You can cut that part out. I don't want Papa to watch that. So you can cut that part out.
Nah, that's staying.
I will say one of the things, because like you mentioned, there's a lot of nudity in the film, but it's oddly erotic, but not at the nude points, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like where people are praising a movie like Baby Girl for being this erotic, horny kind of film. Margaret Qualley actually did a film called Sanctuary last year. That was another very horny film.
She also did Kinds of Kindness, a very horny film.
Kinds of Kindness definitely has. But the difference between those two to me is in here and in Sanctuary, that eroticism is achieved without nudity. There's nudity in the film, but like Margaret Qualley exudes sexuality at her most when she's filming the show versus when she's standing naked in front of a mirror. And I think that there's something powerful and incredibly intriguing about that, which I think is something that she specifically deserves credit for, because she's done it in a few films now.
I completely agree. Like showing showing your skin like that, but it's like it's being like you're being vulnerable, and like that. I think that's what I liked. Like thought was so fascinating about this film, like you just mentioned, like the nudity, it's there, but it's more of like a liberation, more like what's the sex, like I don't want to say sexy, but like the more erotic thing about it is during the body horror aspects, and like that's where you get to see like all of that stuff play out. But like when they're showing their bodies, it's just like showing like their like rare, like true forms, kind of more or less, whether they be the good, the bad, and towards the end, the ugly. So
no, and I think that's a great place for us to wrap up. And I'm thankful that we were able to talk about The Substance going into today. It is a great film. We have visited our better selves and worse selves talking about this, for that matter. And I am very curious to see what not only Demi Moore does going forward, but Coralie Fairjay. Just awesome stuff from her. But as always, you can find Nick and Paige over here on Bitesize Breakdown. Shak, where can the good people find you?
You could find me on pretty much the entire internet at Shak Excellence. That's SHAK Excellence. That's Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Letterboxd, all of that stuff. And you can find my writing over at Comics Gaming Magazine. That's cgmagonline.com.
And as always, you can find me over at Walk with Entertainment. That's my personal channel. But besides there, I'm here doing a bigger bite. So be sure to come back for future episodes. But with that, folks, signing off, I am Matt. That is Nick. I almost said Paige. That is Paige. And that is Shaq. And we'll see you next time.